VA loan closing costs. Who's really responsible for paying them? Let's dive into it now. Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Ricardo. I'm a real estate broker here in San Diego, California, and I am a Marine veteran and I've used my VA loan several times myself. So I feel like I'm somewhat qualified to give you guys the lowdown on all things VA associated. So who pays for VA loan closing costs? Well, common misconception is that the seller pays for VA loan closing costs. However, that's not really the case. So let's dive into it in this video and see where it takes us and see what we learn and see how you can avoid some of those closing costs. Hey, so first, what are closing costs, right? So both sellers and buyers in a real estate transaction are gonna pay closing costs. So closing costs include title insurance, title search, escrow fees, lender fees, discount points, just some of the fees that are associated with the closing costs to buy a property. There's also gonna be prepaid fees, such as prepaid taxes, prepaid homeowners insurance, prepaid hazard insurance. There's a bunch of little fees that get added up that equal the total amount of the closing costs. So it's not just one thing that makes the closing costs so expensive. It's a bunch of little fees that are added up that give you these big costs of the closing costs. So how much are closing costs? So from my experience working with different escrow companies, different title companies, and helping multiple buyers and sellers along the process, closing costs are about 1.5% to 2% of the purchase price or sales price of the property. What does that mean for you? If you're buying a $700,000 property, your closing costs are gonna be looking like $14,000. So why should you know that number? You should know about that number because that's a fee you're gonna have to pay at the end of escrow. So you have to make sure you have that in your bank account, or you have to make sure that you have an angle to minimize those costs or to come up with those costs so that you're able to close on the property. Who pays for these closing costs? Let's talk about it. So who pays closing costs, right? Common misconception is that on VA loans, the seller is responsible for paying the closing costs. That's just not the case. It's the buyer's responsibility to pay these closing costs. It's their house, it's them funding the loan, so they have to take on those responsibilities. Are there some fees that they don't have to pay for because of their VA loan? This is true, but when it comes down to it, the burden of the responsibility for closing costs is on the buyers. Now, how can we avoid some of those closing costs? Let's talk about that. So how do you avoid closing costs on a VA loan? Well, you can't avoid them altogether, but you can minimize them. And a few tricks you can do is one, just offering the amount you want credited to you over what you intend to purchase the property for. So if you're gonna offer $700,000 to buy the house, offer $705,000. And you talk to the listing agent, they talk to the seller and say, hey, we're offering you this price with the expectation that we're gonna get a $5,000 seller concession so that it drops down our closing costs and we're able to move forward with the purchase. Pretty simple, the VA allows it, sellers are allowed to do it, so it's just pretty much negotiating the deal and communication what it comes down to, right? Another way you can do it is financing the closing costs into your loan. Now, although this is an option, you might not wanna do it because it's gonna raise your mortgage up and it's also gonna have you paying more interest over time in the life of the loan. So it's an option. The best option is to probably ask for a seller concession by offering more and then coming up with the rest out of pocket, because you also have to remember there's the VA funding fee that's gonna be very dependent on your situation. The percentage varies, how many times you use the VA loan. So it can be an extra $10,000 to $15,000 if you're buying in San Diego. That's gonna add it to the back of your loan. So you don't wanna be negative equity in your home. VA loan closing costs are here. They're not going anywhere. The seller doesn't have to pay for them. The buyer is responsible for them. However, if you use some tips and strategies, you can lower and minimize your closing costs, be able to close on your property, move into your house, start your next journey of life, and just get going, right? So I really appreciate you watching this video to the end. If you found any value in it, like, comment, subscribe, share, show us some love. Until next time, take it easy.